Welcome to NeuroMovement Revolution with Anat Baniel, where you will discover breakthrough possibilities for your life through the brain's power to change. We're so happy that you can join us in making the impossible possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil, for connecting all of us. And this is our first interview podcast in association with the screening of the fabulous, if I may say so, documentary that was written, directed, and produced by Geordie Trifa. And so, Geordie, welcome to this conversation. So let me first of all introduce those of you who don't know who Geordie is. Excuse me one moment. Geordie Trifa is a Canadian producer, director, writer, and director of photography. Geordie's most recent films include Black Rock, a half-hour documentary with CBC, and the feature documentary A Life Unbound, released in 2019, following the work of, and that's Geordie's writing, naming me, internationally renowned neuroscientist Anat Baniel. Thank you, Geordie. I appreciate it. The film has found a global following, screening in over 30 cities globally, and was a finalist at the 2020 Raw Science Film Festival. Geordie has worked in the film and television industry for nearly a decade, spending 2 years with the CTV and working as a director of photography for award-winning films such as Who Farted, to be released on documentary, I reached the bottom here, a channel in 2020 dramas such as the short film Asimi. Geordie has produced and directed countless commercials and films over the last decade, shooting on nearly every continent on the globe. So, Geordie, what did I do here? I have no idea. Here you are. Great to see you in your gorgeous Canadian forest behind you. And I know that
I'm actually on vacation right now, so I took a ferry across from my place. I'm on Salt Spring Island at the moment. So,
well, from one gorgeous background to another, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so thanks for coming on during your vacation. And you know, I thought we were, first of all, I said very briefly when I was up 3 years ago in Saskatoon, and I did a couple of grand rounds and a public workshop. Your childhood friend asked me whether you can film, because her son, Nash, was born with severe challenges and had real severe issues with his development. And she said, oh, you just do a little bit, it'll be a little YouTube or something. And I said, sure. And then 6 months later, I get a email from you that it's a documentary. And then we worked some together, and it became a 52-minute documentary with some wonderful neuroscientists contributing to the film. I personally love it, and everywhere I've shown the film, people are deeply inspired, and not just in terms of what they see, the changes in the little child, Nash, and in the adult, Tessa, but also they're inspired for their own life. Somehow it translates to people, they identify for their own life. So again, every opportunity I have, thank you for the depth of my heart for doing it. It's a remarkable way to demonstrate the power not only of our work, but also of the human potential, directly addressing neuroplasticity and neuroscience and movement sciences. So I'm curious, because I realized before this interview, I never asked you I took what Allie told me, but I never asked you what moved you to want to do the initial filming, and what was the process? Did you think it'll become a documentary? How about you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, well, you know, where this actually started, you know, you really got to start at the beginning, I think, to kind of understand how this whole thing unfolded. But, you know, me and Allie went to elementary school and high school together. So we actually, our parents lived on the same street. And so we'd known each other for a very long time. And about maybe as a year and a half before the filming started, all of a sudden on my Facebook, I see Allie has accepted your friend request. Now, it was a strange thing because I realized I'd sent that friend request to her like years before that. And for some reason, all of a sudden, this friend request is accepted. And this is quite a few years after high school. And I was like, oh, that's curious, you know, and didn't think much of it. And I think the next day she had sent me a long message on Facebook, you know, just letting me know what they had been going through with their son Nash, and that, you know, they had started working with ABM and the changes that they were seeing, and they were raising money for Nash. And so she, you know, she said, well, you know, I really love the stuff that I've seen of yours. Like, you know, I don't know what it would cost, but like, you know, would you be willing to make some kind of video for, you know, for my family help for this fundraiser? And I was like, oh, you know, like, don't worry about the money. Like, I'm happy to just, you know, help you guys out with something. And so we went and we shot with them for part of a day, and we put together like a little 10-minute video for their fundraiser that kind of told Nash's story and the Jacoby family's story. And you know, and everybody really loved it, and it went over really well. And then she came back to me about 6 months later. She's like, you know, I feel like we should do something bigger, right? I feel like there's, you know, something we should do that's bigger. And I was like, okay, well, like, what are you thinking, you know? And so we had a chat back and forth, and she's like, well, you know, Anat's coming, you know, whenever it was June or something. And you know, so maybe we could start there. And so, you know, I said, okay, sure. And that was, so until then, you know, I really didn't know much about ABM. I mean, I knew I'd seen the impact it had had on Nash, but I, you know, other than that, I really didn't know too much. And then when I was at your workshop filming, at the larger center, and I'd listened to you talk, I believe, at the university just before that, and it kind of all clicked for me. And I was like, oh, this is what she's talking about is actually a lot bigger than what's even being said here. You know, like I felt like this, you know, this totally makes sense in the way that the brain learns and how we're engaging it. And I was like, this could be, I feel like this could be huge. And in some kind of way, I felt like, you know, as a storyteller, I think the thing that inspired me, I was like, well, I feel like I see the potential of what's here, and I feel like I want to be the storyteller that tells the story first, so that, you know, 30, 40 years down the road, when they say, oh, Anat Baniel was this amazing genius who revolutionized all these different things because of her work, well, then, like, you know what, I was the person who told that story first, eh?
I'll take that.
A little bit selfish on my part, I guess. Eh?
I love selfishness. It's purposeful and useful.
But, you know, but the truth is that I saw the potential and the impact for the work. And for me, that was inspiring. So I wanted to tell that story. And, you know, and then having a childhood friend that I'd seen it had such an impact on their lives. So for me, there was something tangible in that. And, you know, and then once that journey started, I mean, you know, whether that was flying out to go to the trainings and meeting a lot of families and, mothers and fathers who had had their lives impacted by their work, their children's lives, and hearing their stories, and, you know, spending time with people like Tessa, and you just realize how special of a thing, you know, that was happening, you know, not just in the work itself, but also in the community that was being created around the work. I think that was also like a really another powerful kind of piece of it. And, you know, so that's kind of what started the wheels in motion. And, you know, and it's been a fabulous journey ever since.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, it's been amazing. And, you know, when you mentioned that Nova said that they would like to have some scientists, brain scientists, I said, oh, no, not a problem. And I just sent an email to actually 5, and one couldn't do it. He was busy writing a book and whatever. But all 4 said yes. And of course, now I know that there are other people that I would have brought in, but I just thought that the ones that were in front of my mind, each of them amazing human being, amazing scientists, amazing, some of them amazing practitioners also. And it was just a wonderful, so it became a wonderful process for me, because I never asked them to do this before, because it never was called for. So, and they're all going to be, by the way, on a interview podcast during this 6 days. So, Geordie, I'll talk about this film one more question, and then I want to move to what you're doing now and what your vision is, and maybe a little bit again, other questions if we have time left. So if you were just to say 1 or 2 or 3 things that you learned, that you figured out or learned through doing this film, that you find that is impacting you because you're a phenomenal storyteller, you're really amazing. And we have had some long conversations, and we really connect on levels that you can't force, right? It's kind of like, it's just there. But if you don't mind, just if there's anything you're aware of, and if you don't like any of my questions, just tell me to skip and I'll move to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of, a big thing that's kind of happened is that I witnessed things happening with my children, or even things with myself, and I see a transition or where there's a connection made, and I actually see that I'm seeing it. And I'm like, oh, I think that's, so a lot of what you're talking about, I see these things practically work out in different areas of life. And I've told the story before about, with my daughter's reading, and just kind of the cliff notes on it is my daughter, went to a Waldorf school where they were using a lot of art-based learning for how they were teaching them how to read. So they were doing stories and art and all these kinds of things around letters, but they never actually started the process of reading. And we travel a lot for work, and we're up in a northern island community way up by Alaska. And my kids got a chance to go to school there for a couple of weeks at the local school. And so in that class, they were using kind of phonetics as a way to teach. And my daughter showed up that morning, and they started doing that. And by the end of the day, she had become the best reader in the class,
And she couldn't do it to begin with.
She couldn't do it to begin with because she had never tried. Right? Like she never really seriously tried because they weren't learning that part yet. And it was just, everything clicked for her. Yeah. It was like, right. And so, and then, so the teacher had told this to the principal, and the principal had talked to me about it after. And he's like, oh, like, what do you, what's asking questions about it? And, and when he told me about it, the first thing that popped into my head were really the essentials. And it felt like those essentials that that you had talked about are what like I was kind of seeing that in a live kind of, what I'll call it was like the 9 essentials out in the wild,
Yeah, out in nature, right? Out in the wild. I like that. I should write a little article, the 9 essentials out in the wild, and see what will be under it. Under this title, and just naming, there's variations, big time. There's flexible goals, big time. There's enthusiasm, big time. There is a movement with attention to what you feel by using the arts and what you do is you create the underlying neural networks that once they're there, it's in the context of reading, then it puts it together. I worked with Elizabeth. It started me all the work with children, and I started with her. She was a year plus something, a few months old, so there was no reading involved. But when she was in first grade, she was probably 7. I would think that's when they put her in first grade. She had real trouble learning to read, and I knew that I had challenges big times, because I did other things with her, and the vision didn't translate into motor activity that was relevant. And so I looked for a solution, and I said, well, they've been already telling her what it is, and it ain't working. So, my big principle, if he could, he would. If she could, she would. So if it's not working, do something else. It's like, don't tell people to do what they can't do. And so it occurred to me that to get her to notice the simplest thing, to see if she can even recognize something really simple. And what's the simplest shape in my mind was, in writing English, a dot, right? You put a dot on top of an I, or in cursive and so on. So I took a thing, and I just, and of course she's a little kid, so I did it, and it tore the page. So it was fun. And I said, what's that? And she said, it's a dot. So then I took my finger and I said, what's that? What shape is that? And she said, a dot. So then we moved to lines, to straight lines, curvy lines, half circles, circles. And I did the shapes all over her body, on her back, on her face, where it has some more sensitivity, so on, in the legs and so on. And correlated it with the visual, so she felt it, and she saw it, and she felt it. She learned to read in a week. And that's a girl with diagnosed severe, blah, blah, blah. And she, within a week. And I remember when my daughter went to school, and it was like week after week reading. I said, why are you wasting so much time on something that can be learned so much faster? I went to the school, and I tried to convince them to cut in half the reading time, learning to read time, because I said it can be done really much faster. So and how about you use it to teach them a different language? I was trying to get the school to use that. They were very nice to me, but they didn't listen to me either. So they didn't work very well. So tell us a little bit. I know you're still in the field of education and development and learning. So how about you tell us about your new exciting project?
Yeah, so I've got a new film coming out. It comes out in the fall. It'll be out kind of just in time for the start of the school year. The new film is with the CBC in Canada, and it'll be available internationally online as well. And it's called Pandemic Elementary. So basically, once the pandemic started, my family decided to homeschool, or do a version of homeschooling called unschooling. And we made a film about it. And, I brought Anat on as well to kind of take part in that. And we had a discussion, and I think she provides, well, and one thing I'll say too, Anat, part of the reason why I brought you on to that project was because, being a Lloydminster and seeing you talk about, starting to apply these things to education. One thing that I'll say that I really have learned through this process, this journey I've been on with 3 years, was there's kind of what you apply to, like, the rehabilitation element and what you're doing. But when you brought it into the education element, and I heard you speaking about that, what happened was I started to learn a lot about parenting. And that's another huge part of that, right? And it was kind of those lessons around parenting, was what kind of inspired me. I said, I think this is a good film to kind of bring a knot on. And once you see the film and the clip we used is just like a really useful piece of advice for parents as we all kind of move through just raising children in these really unprecedented times. So I think, it really is fantastic. So with this film, we're following that journey. For us, I'm lucky that, living in coastal BC, I have, I have an ocean view from my house and a beautiful forest right behind me. So we have access to all this amazing nature that, we're able to kind of turn into our living classroom, if you will, a place of exploration to create some really magical experiences with our children. So, the film follows that and just kind of navigating these things. Of course, the process of homeschooling is as much a learning process for the parent as it is for the child. And there's a lot of ups and downs in that process. But I mean, so far, we're seeing things that are really working with our kids.
Wonderful. And and you'll show it in the film.
Yeah.
And, you know, I asked you this question before I came on for the interview for the film. You know, you, as you said, you're in a wonderful environment, and you know, you have 3 kids at home. So the parents, so you're already a little tribe, and you have all the neighbors that, you know, are accessible. So, but there are people who live in a small apartment and cooped up with kids, and in areas that they can't go out, or there's nowhere to go place freely, and especially if there's needs to be, like in California right now, social distancing. You can't put the kids just together. It's not working right now. Do you feel that this half hour, because to translate from your basically idyllic environment, to translate it to many people's different, very different lifestyle, do you feel it's going to work?
Well, you know, I mean, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, you know, at the end of the day, we're living a fairly privileged life, right? Like, I mean, you know, my wife, she's a stay-at-home mom, and, you know, with my schedule, I mean, I generally work from home, you know, unless I'm traveling and on the road. So we have a unique situation that can make it work. I understand for a lot of parents, and both parents have to work full time and do these kinds of things, that, you know, a lot of other challenges, you know, for people to you know, make that choice. It's not so easy for everybody to make this kind of choice. So I recognize that. You know, I mean, as far as using the things around us, I think even, you know, we were talking actually when we were doing the filming for that, right? And I think no matter where you live, even if you're in New York City, I think going out into the street, you know, going out and walking around New York, I think there's a lot of learning experiences you can have all over the place. And I think what you were talking, you said, you know, at the end of the day, math is in everything. It's all around us, right? I think it's learning how to kind of recognize those elements there. So I do think this idea of, you know, and I think especially because some parents right now, and I think is in the pandemic, like for us, like, you know, as long as we're in a pandemic, like I probably won't even consider sending my children back to school. Not just for the, you know, I think there's the safety element of being sick, but I think also the potential for schools to be open and then shut down and then open again and then shut down again, you know, if like a few cases go into the school and suddenly that class is gone for, you know, a week while they test everybody. I think it can be really disruptive for children and their learning. So, you know, for me, that's why we're kind of on that's one of the reasons why we're on this path at the moment too. And so I think there's a lot of other parents, and I've seen online, there's a lot of other parents that are really trying to think about these questions. And so I think, you know, even if you are kind of, you know, or have some of this online learning, but you're, as a parent, you're trying to think about how to kind of up the experience of home learning. I think that, you know, what we kind of show in the film, and it's done in a very kind of artistic narrative form, but it's just like, you know, how do we just create a sense of wonderment, or like basically in terms of how, you know, the 9 essentials is like, really, how do we create enthusiasm and turn on the learning switch with the world we have around us, you know?
Yeah, I love you saying that, because, you know, due to the this morning you heard it in the podcast that and she's actually Canadian, and she's a medical doctor, and she's in the training program, becoming also a practitioner. And basically she requested that I do a course, an online course for parents, how to use the essentials in homeschooling them. And I'm so excited about it. It didn't occur to me. I didn't even think of doing it. But once she said it, I said, well, we can really do that. I mean, it's very straightforward. And what we're finding, to the extent that we're doing coaching for parents of children with special needs, it really transforms the parents. It transforms the relationships between the parents and the child. And it also transforms the relationship between the parents. And it really enhances it in magnificent ways. So in this period of time, as hard as it is and is new and different, and so many elements that are built into the oldest parts of our nervous system are not satisfied. We are tribal, we are clan, we need closeness, we need interaction, we regulate each other's nervous systems or dysregulate it, depends how we're acting. But we are built as truly as profoundly social beings. And of course, Zoom allows us to stay social, but the kinesthetic movement, feeling, sensing, direct is really lacking. And one of the thoughts that I'm working through, now you look like you're an angel. There's this light reflecting behind your head. Yeah. Or Saint Geordie. That sounds good. Anyway, so the thing is, how can we bring more of the kinesthetic, the really kinesthetic experiences? Anyway, in my world, movement is the basis for everything. I mean, movement is without movement, the brain would not be able to function. And with really no movement, we won't be alive anyway. So, because especially as the kids get a little older, they have a curriculum. They have to do math, they have to do English, they've got to do history and so on. And it's important to learn. I'm a big believer in learning and in knowledge, not just, whatever, but how to weave the feeling and the movement and the relationship to self to the learning, which I think regular schools to do. So now in the project in Lloydminster, we are doing it, and we just heard yesterday. We were with the superintendent. It's in the United States. What's the name of the position? Superintendent Neil?
I think he is superintendent of the school division.
Yeah, but he has another title. He has a Canadian title for what he does. This is the American title. Anyway, so, and the woman in charge of all the programming and all the special education programming, and they're both amazing people. We love them. They're just a gift. You know them. You were there. We brought Geordie in to film everything. And so when we started working there, so one of the girls that also got some private work, that was like really difficult, like meltdowns and da-da-da. The transformation, we didn't finish the full year. We had to stop in April. But she performed on stage. What did they say she did? And they were all like stunned.
I think it was a dance recital.
She performed this is a girl that couldn't follow an instruction the first time we did the movement work with the kids. So I'm very excited about what you're doing and about looking at what we need, and we know we need, and what I understand the brain needs, and the kind of anchors and connections that have to go between the different senses and the different aspects of ourselves, and how to bring it to parents and give them the freedom, just like with your daughter, to be able to move away from the drill of the thing that needs to be learned and create a condition that turns the learning switch on and allows the brain to be creative and figure it out. So I'm very excited about that. And of course, I want you to film everything we do, but that's not going to happen right away.
I'm wondering, Anat, if we should open up for any questions. I've opened the chat up, so anybody who wants to put anything in the chat can put something in the chat.
Say something or also we can, if they want to say anything or ask anything.
And otherwise, you two can just keep chatting.
Well, we're about done with our time. It's a half-hour interview.
Goes quick.
Yes, it does go quick, but it's just so wonderful and heartwarming, and and personally, and also the different people I'm connecting with, that okay, so I'll just tell you the general thing. One of the places is really looking at childhood trauma. Of course, there's adult trauma, but in this case, we're looking at childhood trauma and how it impacts the brain, literally the formation of the brain, and behavioral, of course, and other aspects of that we can look at. And there are a number of people, some of which you already met, but neuroscientists, and then somebody you haven't met yet, that are really doing very, very important work on it and looking to find a way to scientifically, these are top scientists, top researchers, to scientifically, and not just by, people's declaration of what things are, to define how do we know that this is happening, and also to define what drives it. So for me, both sides. I mean, I have watched children I work with, like that have special challenges, and sometimes the intervention is inevitable, like certain medical stuff that can be painful or scary. And then some of the things are done like as rehabilitation that in its own right is trauma causing. And people don't know that they're doing that. So this is an area that I looked at very closely. I did it with musicians, the way that they're trained as little children, taught to play an instrument, pretty much promises their challenges and physical issues and pain that they had when they're older. So just stay tuned. We'll see what happens with that, because I think that'll be really, really important.
Sounds interesting. I'm always into interesting stuff, Anat, so you just let me know and we'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Geordie. This is going to be an evergreen on our podcast. And, whenever you have update after it comes out in September, your pandemic, how do you call it? Pandemic?
Elementary.
I give it the wrong name. So I took the wrong name and used it myself. Elementary. And maybe we'll do something around that when it comes out. Sure.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Geordie. Thank you, Anat. And just a reminder to everybody that the movie A Life Unbound is online until Saturday.
No, until Saturday, right?
Yeah. And also, this is the first of 6 live interview Q&As, and I'll put the schedule up on the screen now. But we would love to have you for any of those. The next one is tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. with Dr. Rick Hansen.
Then we have Dr. Michael Merzenich, who is basically the father of neuroplasticity. Then Dr. Martha Herbert, who is an amazing neuropediatrician. She's also a PhD in psychology, a researcher, big person in the autism world, and is a 2-time ABM practitioner. She took the training twice. And then Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor, many of you have heard about her, My Stroke of Insight podcast, TED Talk, and a book. And she also took a big portion of the training program because she wanted to understand what it is that we do. And then we're not seeing, if we can scroll down or something, show it's Dr.
It should be there. I can see it. I don't know if other people can. Dr. Christina Bethel, Saturday at 6 p.m.
Yeah, at 6 p.m. And she's the one that has done a huge amount of work on and doing. I mean, she's done amazing stuff, and she's not been yet with me on anything, and she's become also a close friend. Her work is phenomenal, and she's doing a lot of stuff around the childhood trauma and the relationship between maternal experience and the child's experiences, and so on and so forth. And she's a big visionary. So these are the people, a great lineup of people. And thank you, Neil, so much for making this work.
Thank you, Anat. Thank you, Geordie.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Hey, talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on NeuroMovement Revolution with Anat Baniel. You will find all of our podcasts and additional resources on our website at www.anatbanielmethod.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast for free on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn. We look forward to seeing you online for our next NeuroMovement Revolution.